So I think today's video, I kind of want to focus on Paldea Evolved. And the reason why I want to focus on Paldea Evolved, cannot speak today, is because it's a good set. Um, I think everybody can kind of agree it's one of the best, if not the best, Scarlet and Violet era set we've had so far. Now, will that change? Probably. But as of now, as of recording, it is the best, if not one of the best sets of the Scarlet and Violet era. So today, if you guys don't know, I'm not a sealed collector, so I'm not going to talk about the booster box itself and whether or not that's a good buy. I am a singles collector. I like to collect singles. I like to invest in singles, and that's what we're going to focus on today. I'm going to give you guys 5 Scarlet and Violet singles, or Paldea Evolved singles, that I think are good buys at their price point, and 5 that I think are going to come down. And then there's going to be one at the end, which I'm going to, or 2 at the end, which I'm going to talk about that I don't know if they're good or bad buys, and you'll have to essentially just use your own judgment on these 2. So for the first bad buy, and as much as I love this card, and I hate calling it a bad buy, but it is, Baxcalibur illustration rare. As a matter of fact, the whole Arctibax line, the whole Frigibax line, all 3 of the illustration rares done by Tomokazu Kamiya, they were all manipulated. Look at the massive spike in sales that drove the price up in mid-February, right? Obviously, we seen there was a lot of interest driving up for this card. It is a Tomokazu Kamiya card, but we see just a massive, massive buyout spike in mid-February that drove it up. And ever since that spike, it has started to retract and it's just going down. This is one of those cards that at the $40 market price, you can already see it's gone down since its last market point data and from its high point. It's probably best to wait it out because we already see light played and near mint copies are going back down to 30, right? This is one of those cards that got really, really spiked from a buyout and has gone back down 100%. Give it time. This is going to be one of those cards that retracts very, very hard and probably one of the worst buys you can do while it's retracting. I would say if it gets back down to that $20 range where it was right before it spiked, maybe pick one up. You can always go and buy a Japanese copy for like $5-6 if you really want to save money. But this one is a current bad buy. One that I think is kind of a good buy, and this one, a lot of people are going to be like, well, this one seems manipulated too. But it actually isn't if you look at the data. That is Meryl. Meryl spike started happening back in December. Meryl is just projected up, and it's held consistent above that $30 mark. And if you look at the data, there's no date where like an excessive amount, like the Baxcalibur, where there was 60-something bought out in one day. There's no massive sales data on here. Sure, there's a couple of days where a little bit more sold like this one, but it wasn't an attempt to drive it up because it only went up a couple of dollars with that those 30 copies selling. It went from 35 to 37. So for me personally, Meryl's one of those cards, and I'll get to a couple more in this list, that I think in Paldea Evolved just kind of has massive potential to keep climbing over time. This is one of the cards that if I was collecting a single from Paldea Evolved, this would probably be at the top of my radar versus Baxcalibur because there's no evidence of this actually being affected by a buyout. It's more so that it seems like it's natural hype and natural growth that is making this card climb naturally. And I think this is one of the better illustration rares in the set. I think it's massively underrated, especially because of how well known Meryl is as a Pokemon. It was one of the very first Gen 2 Pokemon that was revealed for the TCG. I remember a lot of people when this Pokemon was first revealed, a lot of kids thought it was Pika Blue. Like that was the name that was rumored on the school playground. That this was Pika Blue. It was going to be a blue Pikachu. So a lot of people have nostalgia for this Pokemon. I think it's just a really good buy at its price point. Do I think it will come down? Maybe a bit. Maybe when the hype starts to slow down, maybe it'll come back down. But even before then, it was still a $20, $15 card, $18 card. So it's not like you're going to make a bad buy if you buy this at what is the lowest copy right now, $30. It's not like a terrible buy, and I think it's one of the better buys from Paldea Evolved. Another really bad buy, in my personal opinion, T-Tar. I know T-Tar has been high up, but guys, Look at this data that started making the card climb up. This card was not moving. Now, this is where one of the things that makes a card a bad buy to me. Was this card moving at those prices? Right? We seen this card in December. 3 copies, 2 copies a day at the $30 price tag. Out of nowhere, 22 copies. Next thing you know, it starts climbing up pretty drastically. But look at the prices that we're seeing. The $40 or so price tag, the $50 market price now. At most, we're getting 5 copies sold a day. It's not moving. It's not worth that price tag. You can buy a Japanese or Korean copy for under $10, and that's probably where the play is if you really want this card. At the $50 price tag, which as you can see here, you can get lightly pledged for under $40. But at the $50 price tag that we see the market price, that feels 100% artificial because there's just not enough copies that are moving to warrant it climbing that fast. Even this buyout doesn't warrant it climbing so drastically from that $36 price tag it was 2 months ago. A lot of people will say it's natural growth, but there's not enough copies selling for me to believe this is natural growth when there's 74 listings of the card on market, right? Too many listings on the card on market for me to think this is natural growth for a card. So this is one of those cards where if I was personally recommending something, if somebody came up to me and be like, Nomad, what cards do you recommend me to buy from Paldea Evolved? This would be one of the ones I'd be like, no, don't buy Tyranitar. Buy this next card instead. And that next card is Chiyu EX from Paldea Evolved. I will focus on a mix of IRs and SIRs because I think they sit in the same realm. They got beautiful artworks. They feature awesome Pokemon, and they're usually desirable cards. And this one, on one hand, is not only done by Akira Agawa, but the warm colors make this card such a vibe. It is a stunning card to look at in person if you have not seen it. It is one of the cards that the growth on it seems a little bit more natural. Obviously, with the recent hype, it has gone up a bit, but it's still held that 25 so price tag, and it's only marketing now at like $32.94 for the market price. So it's not like it's bought out and it jumped up to 2-3 times what it was worth. This card has climbed up $7 in the past 2 months. A nice consistent growth. As you can see here, the sales data is holding consistent across the board. There's no date where we have 40, 50, 60, 70 copies bought, and every other day is 15, 20 copies. Every day is showing like a 15, 20 copy buy, and a couple of days where it's a little bit lower, like here you had 10 buys, but it's consistent. So this is one of those cards where I would say if you wanted to go and buy this near mint copy from, I guess it's Pokemon Brie or Pokemon Bri for $34.22, it's not a bad buy. I personally think this is one of the better buys you can get from the set, and one of my favorite cards from the set. I'm a huge fan of Akira Agawa, and her artwork is just always stunning. So if you are a fan of this artist, or if you're a fan of this Pokemon, or more importantly, if you're just a fan of beautiful Pokemon cards, this one is 100% a good buy. A card that I think is a bad buy, and this is one of my favorites from the set, Maushold. Going back to what I said about Tyranitar, does this growth feel right? Look at how many are selling in one day. 4, 5, 2, 2, 4. And this isn't one day of data. This is over 2 days. This is from December 18th to 20th. 2 copies sold. You go to January 11th to 13th. 3 copies sold. 7 copies sold between January 29th to 31st. Does it make sense that this card went from a $12 card to a $30 card? I don't think so, right? This is one of those ones where if there was any card, if I was to bet money on any card that's going to retract from the set, Maushold is it. I don't think Maushold is a popular enough Pokemon, even though it's a cute Pokemon and a really popular Scarlet and Violet era Pokemon. I don't think it's popular enough to maintain a price tag where we're seeing it now $30 plus market price. This card is going to retract. Right now, we're seeing it grow rapidly. It's going to retract. If you feel like you absolutely need this card, you can go buy Japanese copies. I believe they're under $10. I mentioned this in a previous video, how these sellers like to list their Japanese copies on the English listings to make it seem like they're a good deal. but there's actually Japanese listings for these on this site, which they're usually much cheaper. And then plus you can go to eBay and buy them for even much cheaper. You could probably get this card for less than $10 if you absolutely need this card. This is one of those ones where, guys, I would not buy it. Not at the $30 price tag. Another card I would buy, though, at its price tag is Paldea EX. This card has just maintained its rough range between $20 and $22. Its lowest point in the last few months is going to be at 1766. If we look at the data, it is just held consistent, guys. It is held consistent in this time era. There is no attempt at buyouts. You could say these 2 days may have been an attempt at a buyout, but it didn't drive up the price. Like, we still see $23 copies, right? So I'm not going to say that these increased in purchases were buyouts when we're still seeing 40, 50 copies sold every day. This card is very playable. It's still very desired by collectors because of the beautiful artwork. So these spikes in sales don't tell me anything when the days before that we're still seeing 30 copies sold, right? There's still a lot of copies sold. There's no massive jump in the price to indicate that these 60 copies sold were buyouts. And overall, it's still holding very consistent at a fair price point. $23 for a copy, $22 from Fusion Gaming for a copy. Not a bad deal at all, and one of the better cards from the set. A card I would avoid buying personally if I was you guys is Paldea Tauros. Clearly, there was a buyout attempt. It didn't spike the card much, but it brought the card from a $7 copy 2 months ago to a $14 copy. So it doubled its price. The buyout attempt was in mid-February. It jumped it up from 11 to 14. But as you can see, as the price went up, less copies sold, right? Once it was like a $15 card, 11 copies sold. It's going to retract. I still see this as being like a $10 card. It's a beautiful card. So this is one of the ones where if you went and bought the $15 copy for a near mint copy, you probably aren't going to lose a lot of money. But at the same time, if you're trying to get the best value for a buck, this is probably one of the cards to avoid. Another card that I would personally buy is Sprigatito, because this card never had an attempt at a buyout, and it has held consistent. This card, just like Chien-Pao, has ranged from that price range of $15, $13 to the 20s, right? And it has just been a consistent growth over time. It is a starter Pokemon. It is one of the cutest artworks, so it's got that desirability for a lot of collectors, especially collectors who love cute Pokemon, our young lady collectors who love to collect cute Pokemon, our gentleman collectors like myself who love to collect cute Pokemon. It's very, very desirable as a card, and it does move quite consistently. But there is never a day where there was like a massive spike in the amount of sales. Maybe you could say the 73 sales day, but even then it only went up another dollar in market price. So it's not like it spiked the card drastically. And we still see near mint copies at $23 a copy. So it is absolutely a card that is very stunning. It is a card that is holding its consistent price. It is not a card that has been manipulated to that price. As you can see over time, it is just climbed over time. It did have a $15 value, retracted a bit. I believe this was around the time frame when we're seeing a decent reprint wave, but it has just consistently climbed over time ever since then. But another card that was bought out, Miss Magius. Look at this. No consistent sales, right? And then we have 15 sales in one day. What I'm assuming is the market was low on these. It spiked it up to a $20 card. And it doesn't make a lot of sales, right? 110 listings for this card now, where it's $20 plus, 2 to 3 sales a day max, right? Just not a good card to buy. Great artwork. I like the artwork, but this is 100% a card that will retract, especially when the hype dies. My last recommendation for buy, though, is Tinkaton EX. This is another card where I think the growth is just natural. And what I think the growth benefits from is this goes in line with Tinkatink and Tinkatuff EX, or not the EXs, but the IRs, the illustration rares of Tinkatink and Tinkatuff. I think those two illustration rares matching with Tinkaton EX SIR makes it more desirable. We've seen a lot of the SIRs holding consistent. Like when we go back to Chien-Pao, it's holding consistent. It's not spiking much even with the hype. But Tinkaton, on the other hand, has gone up quite a bit. I think having two matching illustration rares helps that desirability of the card. But there's been no attempts to really buy out the card. And for the most part, this card is held consistent. 15, 20 sells every couple of days is not too bad. If we look at the 6-month time frame, we see that at its lowest, we see a $15. If we look at the year, lowest is about $13, which was back here somewhere, right here, at the very beginning of this card's lifespan. And then the lowest recently was about $15. So with it being $30, it has doubled since its low back in, what was that, October? But even in November, this card was climbing. Even in November, this card was climbing, and that growth does seem more natural than other cards that we have seen. Once again, you can get copies for under the market price. Market says 30.81, but we see a near mint right here for 30. We see some for under 30. So to me, it's a good buy. Now, when it comes to the last two cards I want to talk about on this video, I don't know if these cards are good buys or not. You got to let me know. Raichu. Raichu illustration rare. Bought out. There was a week-long attempt, or at least a week-long spike in sales. It may not be a buyout, but it does feel that way. It spiked up to 58 at its high point and has started to retract a bit. It's holding steady at 51 for the last couple weeks. That seems to be where its market price sits. But as you can see, there are near mints that are starting to trickle down a bit. For the most part, this card is one that I don't know where it says, because if we look at the year, this card started off a $20 card. It spiked up to its 40s, retracted back down to 30, and wouldn't go under 30 after that initial retraction. So, to me personally, retracting back to 50. Will it retract back to 40? Will it retract back down to 30? I don't know. Will it go under 30? No. Right? So, to me, Raichu is one of those cards that it's got the Gen 1 effect. It's got the evolution of the mascot effect. So it's a fan favorite. Will this card retract back down to this $30 price tag? Will it go back down to 40? Or will it hold consistent at 50? This one's hard to predict. I don't know. I don't know where it'll be, because I'm going to realistically say that we could see this card bought out again and spike even further. So if you're looking to buy the Raichu, this is one of those high risk, high reward type of purchases, right? Because you could buy it and it could retract back down to 30. I don't see it going under 30, because even that retraction from the summer back into the fall, it only went down to 30. It didn't go under 30. So I don't see this going under 30. So at most right now, if you buy a copy, you lose $20 if it goes back down to 30. But once again, you might have a good deal if you buy a copy now and it gets the attention of a buyout group again and gets bought out again, and it spikes it even further. Because the further the buyout spikes it up, the less likely it is to retract back down to the original point, which at this point we're calling the $30 price tag. If it's bought out again and goes up to $100, we're more likely to see it retract to 50 than we are to see it retract to 30. If it gets bought out again after that, goes up to $200, we're probably not going to see it retract down to 50. An example of that is Magikarp. Magikarp had some buyout attempts that have manipulated it. But this card started off a $70 card hot out of the gate, went above 100. And even when it retracted back from its high point over here of 150, it didn't go under 100. And ever since then, it has just been on the consistent rise, with right now the market price being 200 plus. Light plates, 200. If I was to go to condition near mints, the lowest near mint copy that we see in English is about $230. And these are from low feedback sellers. If you wanted to get a seller that you could probably trust, you would have to keep going and keep going. And then you're almost $300 before you get to a high feedback seller. $285 would probably be the first seller I would probably trust to buy a clean copy from. A copy that wouldn't give me issues, right? Guys, even if Magikarp retracts, going back to what I was saying about Raichu, the amount of hype and the amount of spikes that this card is facing, and with only 42 listings, the amount of potential for it to be bought out again and again to keep spiking it. Will this card ever go under 100? I highly doubt it. Will it go under 200? With Paldea Evolved pretty much leaving what I would call the reprint window in the future, maybe not. So this is one of those cards, just like Raichu, where I couldn't put it in the avoid buying, but I don't want to put it in the buy section because those are riskier buys. They can retract. They can also go up. So I would say use your judgment on those last two. You're going to have to just take your best guess and determine whether or not that's money you want to risk in the card you buy. But for the rest of these cards that I mentioned today that are in the Paldea Evolved set, those are my personal recommendations. Hopefully it guys helps you out make smart decisions when it comes to buying. Let me know down in the comment section below if there were any cards that I missed. Was there a card that you think was absolutely a great buy that I didn't mention? Or was there another card you think is a bad buy that I did not mention? Comment down below so that way other people can see. And as always, guys, remember to keep it classy and stay awesome.